Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to the Complete Strength Podcast. This is episode 5, and today I am joined with Sidney. So she is here with me. We're in our Complete Strength studio.
Hey, y'all.
And we have hey y'all. We have our very special guest, Shanna Zolman. Mahaley is our guest today, and Shanna is Sidney's best friend. They were college teammates, classmates, bridesmaids, maid of honor,
Honors.
maid of what do you call that when you're both maid of honor for one another, whatever that is. But
Matrons? No, I don't know.
they were each the maid of honor for the other in their weddings.
And then we also played against each other. We were on different WNBA teams, so we played against each other.
She chipped my tooth.
And I chipped her tooth when we played each other. Yep.
Okay.
We do better when we're on the same team versus defending each other. But yeah, Shauna, here she is.
Yeah. Hey, Shanna, introduce yourself a little bit.
Sorry. Thanks for having me, guys. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was saying, hey, why don't you start with how you and Sidney met for everybody?
Well, Sid and I met, obviously, at the University of Tennessee, but it wasn't all roses at first. I actually didn't really like Sid. I thought she was pretty far out there weird, which is funny because some of those, the weird qualities about Sid is what I love about her the most. And we really didn't, Sid, right, click until the summer after my sophomore year, your freshman year.
Yep.
And we needed to stay because we were working out and we were the hardest workers and we killed one another basically, and then we roomed together. And I found out a lot more about you. I found out that you love Jesus and that we actually had a lot more in common than what I initially thought. So
yep.
I guess to me, that's kind of when we really started, but I met her obviously at UT.
Yep. Yep, it was. I was a rookie or a freshman coming in, and I remember feeling, yep, you're right, so alone. But you were actually one of the first to reach out to me as a teammate and just see how I was doing. And then you also asked me if I wanted to study the Bible with you, and that's kind of how we got started. And that was probably winter, but then we really developed into a really good friendship after our season. Like you said, when we stayed in the summertime and had to work out and do all that stuff.
Yeah, can I tell a story real quick about you?
Yep.
Please.
Because this is like the epitome of Sid, which I love, love, love. But like early on, Sid has this burn on her arm. And all the teammates, because we were all kind of standoffish, because we were like, why, she's standoffish, she's weird, and looking back and knowing how, hurtful that should have and was for you. One of the amazing stories that really epitomized Sid is that she had this burn on her arm, and she told everybody that she was a part of a gang in Birmingham, and we all believed her. We didn't know any different, and so this burn on her arm, we thought she was part of a gang, which really was a hot pot of coffee that was accidentally spilt on her as a child. But like none of us knew if she was joking or not, or if that was like this white girl really part of a gang. Like I really don't know what's going on. But like that's just part of it. And she didn't joke, she didn't blink, she didn't smile. Like she literally said it, matter of fact, walked away. And it was so funny when we look back on it. But that's just it.
Yeah.
That's what I love about her.
I mean, might as well. You got a big old scar on your arm. You got to make up stories for it. So, yeah.
I was like, man, this girl is so comfortable in her skin. She just doesn't care what people think. That's how I always perceived her.
That's funny. Because I was so nervous to say that, but I thought it would be funny. But, yeah.
That's cool. How/why have you remained friends this long? Because you guys, you met in college. That was 2003-ish.
2004,
so like fall
yeah.
2003 into the spring of 04 for you.
I mean, I want to chime in. If you play college basketball, or when we did at Tennessee at that high level, we're there 11 to 12. I mean, we're there all year long, at least 11 months out of the year. When we finish season, we finish school, then we take classes in May, June, and July. We do that so we can get ahead academically because the season is long and we do miss a lot of schooling during the year, so we have to make up for that. In the summer, it's also a great time to get your workouts in and just to get better as a player. So we literally lived together and saw each other many hours out of the day. So it's a good thing that we that we clicked. But I think initially we developed just a really strong bond early on that has carried us on for so long. But Shanna, you can chime in on how come we remained friends for so long.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think the largest and the greatest common bond between us obviously is Jesus. And not to be like churchy and over spiritualize things, but that is the commonality that has really brought us closer together than ever, just simply because of the different kinds of hostile environments that we have been a part of and that we've lived in, that we've played in. Even when we're in WNBA and playing on opposite teams, it's always been like this from day one, that when we see each other, it is like we are in desperation for each other. And like God's timing in that, and the way that we have always kind of been there to encourage one another, not just in our faith, but in life in general, and being married, similar times and kind of walking through the same stages of life. Sid's always just been there. And I think we've stayed friends for so long too, because for me, I trust her. Trust is a huge thing for me. And I trust Sid with my family. I trust Sid with my life. And she's one of the friends that has the best, I've never had to work at boundaries with. Like, Sid is someone that I don't have to worry if I'm offending her by not calling her every week. Or I don't have to worry that I'm offending her in different ways. I just trust her. I know her and I believe in her. And it's just kind of been the easiest friendship because both of us give. Like, I trust that she's going to give as much as I give to her. And it's just been one of the sweetest friendships I've ever had.
It's funny because now, how many years are we into this? Like 15 years. And most of our time we've spent being this close. We've been apart, like countries apart or oceans apart. So I definitely second that. It is our bond in Christ, but also just our experiences are so similar. And if I'm going through something, chances are you've already walked through it, or vice versa. So it's really cool how it does work.
No, that's really cool. Those are really cool stories. So here's, for those who are just joining us for episode 5 of our podcast, Shanna Zolman Mahaley, Sid's best friend, is with us. But to give you guys a little more.
And the holder of every maybe basketball award. Oh, did you find something? Okay, go ahead. Excuse me. I just need everyone to know this thing. So go ahead, Brian.
So Sidney almost stole my thunder there. She almost stole it. So to introduce Shanna, to give you all a better idea of who we're talking about for our sport fan listeners, Shanna is your 2002 Miss Basketball for the state of Indiana. She amassed 3,085 career points.
The girl
in her high school
could
career.
shoot. She could shoot.
3,085 career points, high school, which is Indiana state record, still to this day.
I mean, at Tennessee, I tried to encourage her to do a shooting video because I thought she could really go places with the shooting video that she has. Because the girl knows how to put the ball in the basket, and it's very pretty to watch.
Okay, and we're also talking
really
about
somewhere with that VHS.
Yes.
We're also talking about national records here in consecutive free throws, with 70 consecutive made free throws for her high school career at 70. We have a career free throw percentage of 93.5%.
She can shoot.
These are national records,
Yep.
not Indiana state records or local records. These are national U.S. high school girls basketball records. 70 free throws made in a row, career percentage of 93.5, and season percentage of 95.4 free throw percentage. Those are national records. She was a part of the very first McDonald's girls All-American team in 2002. That was the first year that they had that for the girls. And, there's more. NCAA season and career free throw percentage records of 95.7 and 91.6 for career free throw percentage.
Listen, if in practice, at the end of practice, if Pat ever put us on the baseline and we needed a free throw shooter to come through to make a free throw shot so we didn't have to run, but we could just go and finish practice, Shauna's our girl. And you can all see why.
Shauna's there. 91.6% career free throw percentage, NCAA record. 16th pick of the 2006 WNBA draft to the San Antonio Silver Stars. And Shauna, how many did you play? Did you play 4 or 5 years? Did you play 5 years in WNBA?
Well, technically 6, but some of those were injury ridden.
Okay.
So
yeah, 6 years in that. And then what did you do and what have you been doing after that WNBA time?
Well, right after I retired officially from the WNBA, I moved out to Seattle, where I was a part of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in the greater Seattle area. So I worked a lot with collegiate athletes at University of Washington, Seattle Pacific University, and just really fell in love with the mentorship and discipleship of younger athletes. So I've been doing that for the last 7 years. Just recently finished the end of August, and currently in between jobs, we shall say.
Yeah. Okay. And that's going to lead me. Well, I do have to. Well, here, let me also give you guys. We've already done this, but I have some more. I'm trying to bring out like I've been watching a lot of Colin Cowherd and Dan Patrick lately on their like sports radio TV shows, and they're doing their podcasts and radio stuff. And so now I'm like, I want to be a sports radio podcast person. But joining us, so I have to give some stats on Sidney as well, just so people know like who we're talking to here.
Okay.
So
first of all, let me talk about Shanna real quick.
and Sidney, and so we got to give some stats.
About Shanna real quick.
Okay.
Okay. In college, like I said, we had a lot of time in the summer. We were on campus to work out. So Shanna, I would always go work out with Shanna. I could never beat her in any shooting competitions. Not that I was trying to, but she is one of the reasons that I developed into a fairly consistent 2-point, 3-point shooter is because she would work with me in the gym. So I have to give some credit.
Quit that. You quit it.
Okay. Well,
you are not just fairly consistent. You are phenomenal. Dang it.
Well, there we go. Well, you helped me develop into that. So carry on, Brian.
Okay. So So for our listeners, I just wanted to make it a point, also have some fun, that for Shanna and Sidney to be on this episode with us, I want you guys to understand like who we're talking to here. So we did Shanna. And so Sidney, now we have the 2003 Miss Basketball for the state of Alabama, 2-time Alabama State Player of the Year, 2003 Adidas All-American, Gatorade Player of the Year nationally as well, or for the state of Alabama, Gatorade Player of the Year. And she goes on to Tennessee to be a part of the All-SEC freshman team. So she was All-SEC in the freshman team. Won the national championship in 2007. Yeah. Tennessee. 1,088 career points at the University of Tennessee. So 1,000 career points. Drafted 25th overall by LA. She talked about this a little bit in the second episode that we did together. But she was, speaking of career free throw percentage, I just looked this up because I have I don't know if it's a Guinness book or world records, but I have a world record book here that Sidney's mom gave me where it shows she was the WNBA all-time career free throw percentage record holder. Since has been broken by Elena Deladon, is at 93% for her career now. So Sidney got bumped to number 2 at 91.8% career free throw percentage for her WNBA career, which was the record until just this year or this past year for Deladon, sitting it at 93 for.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. So that's who we're talking to here, people. These are.
Say that they didn't want to foul it. Our team was a pretty good free throw shooting team.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. So what we're going to do is transition now, because the big thing with this, how we wanted to bring Shanna on and have Sidney in as well, and I want to hear you guys talk about all things and anything Pat Summitt and Tennessee Lady Vols basketball. So I think one of the biggest questions, and our big question, is what was it like to play for Pat?
Yeah. That's the question everybody, even if you don't know a lot about basketball, people know Pat. And so I think, Shauna, you can start. That's a huge question to ask, but you can start to try to put some words to that.
Yeah, I mean, even if people have no idea about basketball or sports in general, you say you play for Pat, and it's like all the floodgates of doors open for you because she has so much respect. Rest in peace. But I always comment back saying that she was such a disciplined perfectionist and expected perfection 100% of the time. And it's one thing to say that, and it's easy to say that, and you probably hear it a lot of times from people who play or work for, or, you know, even have parents that are disciplined or perfectionists. But when you think about every single day in practice, every single film session, every single workout, every single conditioning drill, every single time that you were on the floor or around her, you literally had to give 100% every single minute. And that's like constantly being on. And I know that's what you should do all the time when you're an athlete, but she held you to that standard so that if you didn't, there would be repercussions, there would be disciplinary actions, there would be, you know, get your butt on the line type stuff. And that just spoke volumes to her and for her. And I think that's why her teams always did so well, is because we were so fundamentally sound. We were so, well, that may or may not be true, but we were so like extremely perfected in hard work. We exuded that in the weight room. So we were by far in better shape and stronger than any team that we played. And then we had a coaching staff that could, you know, draw up the X's and O's to help us out. But that like portrayed in her life, the minute that she woke up, probably 4 a.m. in the morning, to watch film, to her workouts that she did, to her recruiting that she did, to the way that she operated on and off the floor. She's just a disciplined perfectionist and expects everybody in her circle to do the same.
Yeah. And to take that a step further, she demanded that not only on the court, between the lines, but in everything we did. So when we went to class, we had to sit on the front row if it was a small room, or the first 3 rows if we were in an auditorium. First day of class, we went and talked and introduced ourselves to the professors to let them know who we were, that we would be missing classes on these dates, and it could be months in advance. And just to let them know we would do everything we could to make up that work or to get it done ahead of time. I mean, every single thing, there was excellence that came out of it. So she really developed us beyond just the basketball court, but into at least knowing and being equipped with how to be successful women. I remember we weren't allowed to eat where the where the athletes ate. We were only allowed to live and eat where the normal students were, because we weren't going to be entitled to anything. And so that's just how Pat ran the show, and it trickled down towards everybody.
In order to live off campus, you had to have a certain GPA. I mean, like, she was just as strict, like Sid said, on the court as she was in the classroom. Like, we have a 100% graduation rate at Tennessee Lady Vols, which is unheard of. But it wasn't just about basketball. Like, she wanted you to be an excellent woman that excelled in life. And that's as a mother, that's as a business owner, that's as a coach. I mean, you look at the coaching tree of Pat Summitt, and they're sprinkled everywhere in the women's game, you know, and you look at a lot of the athletes that are owning their own businesses, and you just have this expectation of excellence. And for those that allowed her to help her do that, you know, you see that in life, and you see that in the workplace, and you see that in familial interaction. And for those that didn't, you know, they either transferred or they have very little to do with all things Lady Vols. But yeah, there's definitely a level, and there's definitely a standard. And when you interact with other Lady Vols that maybe you didn't play with, you still all have this level of respect for one another. It's 161 of us.
Yeah, 161.
And everybody looks at each other and they're like, "We made it." You know, like, "Oh, you made it too." You know, if you can make it through that, you're pretty good. Like, you can make it to just about anything in life.
That's true. I remember transitioning out of my basketball career completely, and I talked about that in in episode 2. But somebody brought it to my attention, a good friend, that said, if you can play for Pat Summitt, you can handle this new transition of leaving basketball behind and basically starting a new life, or your second fairy tale, because you have played for Pat Summitt and you have handled that 4 years with her. Something funny about they never had to check on us to see if we were in class because everybody needed a reason to call Pat Summitt. So if the Lady Vols, if I was out at the grocery store the next day, Pat would make some comment about knowing I was at the grocery store. And I'm like, who is watching me? But it was just regular people that knew that we were Lady Vols. So that knew that we were out on the town or doing something would call Pat and let her know. So if we missed a class, a professor would immediately call up Pat because they just want to talk to Pat and then also let her know, hey, Sidney wasn't in class today. So you never did that. You always went.
Eyes everywhere. It's so true. I remember my senior year, your junior year. I remember one of our teammates may or may not have been out and about one night, comes down and rams a line of cars with an RV. They're late for their curfew. And all these things are happening. And then, no, strikes ran the car because obviously you would find out about that. But there was one night specifically, I remember a teammate was getting gas. They were at a gas station, and it was like 10:30 if our curfew was 10 o'clock at night. And I remember her bringing me out of a team meeting, telling me about this, asking me what we should do. Because they're like, I know that so-and-so missed their curfew last night. And my first question to her was like, how do you know? Like, how do you know that somebody missed their curfew one night when it was like 10:30 just getting some gas? Like, what the heck? But she does. She has eyes everywhere. She had them at gas stations. She's had them at restaurants. She has random people, I'm sure, that will be like, hey, this person's out to eat. Make sure they pay for their own meal. Like, she's got eyes everywhere. It was just like she owned the city of Knoxville and everywhere else you were, because you literally lived in a bubble of a glass fishbowl.
Yep. She sure did.
So again, this is my final time with my stats, but I have my stats here.
More
because
stats. Here
more
we go.
stats.
All right.
More stats for this. So again, just to put it into perspective a little bit on the sports side for the listeners here that maybe they don't know who Pat Summitt was, or maybe they don't know the history of Tennessee Lady Vol basketball or some of those things. So Pat Summitt, 38 years as the Tennessee basketball coach, won 1,098 games, which at the time of her retirement was the most wins in NCAA basketball history.
Male or female.
Male or female, any level, the most wins in NCAA basketball history. Up until last season, Coach K at Duke just hit 1,100 wins last season basketball. So over the past, I think that was like 43 years of that record being established and standing. My three stats here are of the course of Pat Summitt's career at Tennessee: 16 SEC championships, 18 Final Fours, and 8 national championships. That's crazy, incredibly awesome.
Yep.
Like that is people say that she was the best basketball coach, the best college basketball coach, one of the best basketball coaches in our history of the sport.
Well, I mean, when we were being recruited, we automatically assumed like we didn't have to set the goals to get to the Final Four because we knew we were going to the Final Four.
It's got to be automatic.
The goal was we're going to win a national championship. That's what our goal was. And so it wasn't like, let's just make it to the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. No, we're getting the Final Four. Let's get to that championship game. So that's kind of just our expectation. And that's how we worked. And you could tell that in practice.
And if you didn't, it was a failure.
Exactly.
Like any year that we didn't win the national championship, it was, or lost a game, it was like total failure. You don't forget about it, and it's used as leverage and motivation for the next game or the next year. You know, like that's the level of expectation every single day, every single year that you play, for sure.
Yep. Because come April, if we didn't win a national championship, then those 4 months up until August, September, when you started working out again as a team, that kind of set what happened in April, whether it was a horrible loss or a win, that kind of set the tone for the summer. And then you did not forget that easily, is what I'm saying. So
cool. So we talked a lot about what it was like to play for Pat. That's what we've been talking about, just kind of how that was so special and the overall experience as a lady ball player. Are there, and you mentioned you guys talked a lot about just some of her characteristics, but are there specific or a few teaching/coaching points, life points, things that have really stuck with each of you guys that after all these years that you want to be able to put towards your kids, the FCA kids, the athletes, the other people you're mentoring, or any of that? Just what are some of those teaching, coaching points that have really stuck with you?
Shauna, you can talk on this.
Okay. Just specifically from Pat that we learned, Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the thing, it's going to be discipline. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be the attention to detail. And one thing that really stood out to me was that she remembered everybody's name that she met. So she met you one time. Fast forward X amount of years, she sees you again. She still remembers your name, gave you a handshake, looked you in the eye, and gave every single person the same amount of respect, no matter who you are or what you were a part of. And that always stood out to me, and it always instilled in me just that level of respect that you give other people, but also that attention to detail when it comes to relatability with one another. But aside from that, most of the things that I learned from Coach Summitt that meant the most to me had nothing to do with basketball. It had so much to do with life off the court, because Coach Summitt helped me through one of the hardest moments of my life when my senior year was the year that her father died. She was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Her husband, at the time, she was going through a divorce. She found out that he was unfaithful to her during my senior year. And that was an extremely hard year, but I didn't know any of this was going on, aside from, obviously her father passing. But how she handled that, and then fast forward 4 years, realized I went through the exact same thing, was going through a divorce, experiencing a lot of infidelity in my previous first marriage. And I went back and I lived with her for 3 months. And during that 3 months, I had a final surgery, one of 3 on my knee. And she went through a lot of my divorce proceedings with me. I went to the divorce court and lawyer with her, and we talked daily. We talked every morning, just asking her random questions that would come up, like, how am I supposed to deal with this? How do I deal with that? What did you do in this situation? And she was always there. She was always there to offer hospitality, to offer love as a second mom figure for me. When a lot of things in my life were just completely up in the air and unknown, like she was someone that just grounded me and offered me things that a lot of people couldn't. And knowing that she had experienced that, knowing that I went to Tennessee partially to go through that with her, I never would have known that as a kid, being recruited. But afterwards, knowing the type of impact that she's had on my life and how to operate respectfully and being above reproach, not that I always have been or always was, but being able to operate in such a manner, I saw that in her when she went through the exact same thing. And if you don't know what that's like, it's hard to help somebody else through that, And having her there through that time, I learned more from her in those 3 months while she was actually being diagnosed with Alzheimer's at that time too, the Mayo Clinic. It was just this cluster of a time for her personally, but I realized through vulnerability and apologizing to her for things that I said and the ways I acted, seeing how it affected her, yet she's still here for me during my toughest time in life. Like, that's something that not a lot of people have the opportunity to experience or to hear about that side of her. A lot of people see the coach and the blue-eyed stare and a lot of other things, but the most that she's impacted me was life outside of basketball. And I guess a teaching point out of that is just when you go through crap in life, everybody does, and there's value in it. Life happens for you. Life doesn't happen to you. And utilizing those opportunities to share with other people and to empathize with other people going through that same situation. I mean, she gave me the 100% 101 of how to do that with people and for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I
That's
totally.
really, I mean, that's really great.
I
That's
totally
really
agree. The way Pat handled every person mattered and was valuable. And people demanded her attention all the time, whether it was news reporters, basketball, her family, other coaches. And yet Pat made everyone feel valuable and important, and especially her players. And that's something I loved, watching how she treated a bus driver, a security guard, the president. She always was the same person. And I learned so much about that from her. A very valuable thing that I also learned, I'm just going to chime right in with what I learned. I learned the value of being on time, because there was one time that Shanna, myself, and our point guard were doing extra workouts in the summer. And so we had been in an extra workout, and we were driving in, and we were late for a team meeting that Pat had called right before we were going to lead a camp. And Shanna and the point guard made it into the meeting, but I got locked out. And then Pat, after she said I couldn't come in, and so we were locked out or whatever. But after she had the meeting, she came out, and that woman got so close to me, to my face, and explained to me the value of being on time. And so from that point out, I was forever changed about the importance of being on time, and that she was going to hold everyone accountable. It didn't matter if you were a player. I don't care if you were doing an extra workout. That's great. You still have to be on time, and you're going to be held responsible for it. That's an important thing. She also, Pat, what? Go ahead, Sean.
You have to tell, though, that wasn't just any meeting. It was at our all-night camp with like hundreds of coaches who were the coach counselors at camp. And so it was hundreds of people in this room. She did this too.
And we got locked out.
Yeah.
And then she came and found us. But somehow she didn't find you and the point guard. She found Sidney. And Sidney learned that day, that moment, what it meant to be on time. And then one other thing can I talk about? I love, and I use even to this day, is one of her principles. She's known for her definite dozen. It's 12 principles that she used. She's spoken to many corporations about it. She used them with her teams. But they're basically, she says, if you do these 12 principles or live your life according to these, that you'll be successful. And one of them that I use with the kids that I train these days is handle success like you handle failure. And I love using that with my kids that really are up and down, whether they're winning or playing well or losing or just really playing bad. We stay even and balanced. And I love that. And I come back to that all the time. And so that's something that I use with my young kids today.
That'll preach.
That will preach.
That'll preach. No, these are great. This is great. I just quickly, maybe, or this is a little shorter, but I did want to, Sidney and I talked a little bit on our episode 2, about her WNBA and overseas professional career after Tennessee. But Shanna, same kind of thing for you. What was the transition like for you from the college to the pro game? And you guys can talk about like some of the differences between the WNBA experience, the overseas experience, what you liked, disliked about both. Just kind of overall, maybe a little more briefly about what that experience was like and what was the transition like.
Yeah, the WNBA transition for me was less difficult on the actual playing floor. It was more off the floor. Playing and practicing at Tennessee, you're practicing against guys that are far stronger, quicker, faster than you are. Plus, you're playing at the highest level. So playing in the WNBA was really no problem as far as transition. It was great competition, don't get me wrong, but the transition to get from college to the WNBA was not near a transition as much it was off the floor of learning what a professional athlete looks like, lives like, preps, because you don't have pregame. You travel on regular commercial flights. You don't have your own private jet. You are expected to perform, and then once you are done playing, it is totally your life to do what you want. So I had to learn more off the floor transition as far as how I truly prepare my body, how I utilize their 401k, how I utilize the hotels small gym equipment right after I got off the plane to get my body readjusted and acclimated after, the airplane ride. Like, there's little things like that of learning what it meant to be professional that was more of an adjustment than the actual game. Because really, a game is a game. You have different teammates. Yes, it's a different style of play because it's quicker, longer athletes, quicker shot clock. And overseas for me, Sid had a much, much better experience overseas than I did. I really honestly didn't enjoy overseas as much. I utilized overseas a couple months here and there to get my body back acclimated after surgery, but I didn't fully embrace nor enjoy the overseas lifestyle like Sid did. And I'm envious. Like, I'm really excited that she got that experience. I just didn't have that. And I was also kind of a rough season of my life over there too, in and out of, going through marriage trouble. So that was a very difficult transition. But I would say the transition from high school to college on the floor playing is much more difficult for me personally than the transition from college to professional.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah. Because, like Shanna was saying, with our practice players, our guys, we learned how to see the game at a level that most college coaches aren't teaching their kids, and we did it day in and day out. So it was easy-ish. It was pretty easy.
Easy-ish.
Yeah. And it does help to have the practice guys. That made things a lot more intense. And I even would ask them and beg them if they would stop scoring on me. I'd cook them dinner that night so we could finish practice and leave. So just going to say, I may or may not have done that a time or two. That's why our practice players became some of my best friends.
Practice players were like our brothers, man.
Yeah.
Like, we got so close with them because you literally were going at it like all practice long, scratching, clawing, because you did not want to look bad in practice. And so if they weren't going to call fouls, we're just going to try to beat the crap out of these guys because they can't beat the crap out of us, right? So, but Pat still held them to a certain standard. Like, they had tryouts. They had tryouts for male basketball players to practice against us. And I remember one time she kicked them out of practice because they came. Remember, Sid? They came and they smelled like reeking of alcohol one day. And she's like, I can smell you all over from here. Get off my floor. And kicked them out of practice.
Yep. And our practice players are volunteers. It was also a note that you never dunked on us. And one of them did one day. And she immediately shut that down. I don't care if you had a wide open layup, you laid the ball in, you never dunked on us. So there was a standard that our practice players were held to. So we wanted to make sure we took care of them. But yes, I used to cook them dinner if they would stop scoring on me. So Pat would get off my tail.
That's great.
Yep.
That's great. Final thoughts, pieces of advice for young players, for maybe Division I type hopefuls, pro hopefuls, for the younger girls, the next generations. Any pieces of advice that you've accumulated from Pat or just from your own experience, or anything you wanted to share that way?
You want to take it first, Sid?
Yeah, I would say, especially to our younger girls, I work with many of them. I would say just keep having fun and enjoy and love the game. I think we oftentimes take it too serious too quickly just because youth sports has become really competitive. So I try to keep it fun for my girls, and we work to get better. But I for the younger ones, I would say just keep it fun, enjoy, play multiple sports. Don't go so individualized at such a young age, and just keep enjoying it for what the sport was made for. It was made for pleasure. So that's my 2 cents.
Good.
What about you, Shanna?
For younger athletes, for me, I would reiterate what Sid said, because there's only so much amount of time that the game remains fun, and especially as you're young, that fun element and aspect is like truly to be enjoyed and cherished. But I would also, because this is a stereotyping type comment, but a lot of kids today have the entitled mentality, and you don't have to work. And if you don't work, you shouldn't get anything. Like that the entitled mentality is like a life from the pit of hell, because you really don't deserve anything. So my encouragement would be, every morning when you wake up, it's a competition to know that nobody in the country is outworking you. That's how I always thought. Like, you outwork. So when you go to bed at night, you know that you gave everything that you have to outwork every single person that's playing against you and even with you. And to the older athletes, plus even just people in general, I have a couple of life mottos that I live by. And one is, if you're not passionate about it, don't do it. I'm such a passionate person anyway, that it's not a matter of whether you're going to work hard or not. But if you're not passionate about it, if you can't stay in your lane to really enjoy, going back to that fun element that Sid was talking about, if you're not passionate about it, don't do it. The second one I already spoke on is that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, which goes into my third, is that you're not a victim. There's a mentality that no matter what happens in life, no matter what happens on the floor, no matter what happens off, you're not a victim. Like, you can make good things happen regardless. It's just, it's yours for the taking. So I would say those three things.
Yeah.
For me.
It's what you do with the circumstances you're given. That's good. That's good. Well, I'm sure we could tell stories all day long about Pat and our time there, but we can stop there.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up. Shanna, thanks. Thanks, bud, for being on our The Complete Strength podcast with us. It's been really cool.
My pleasure.
Nice.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Shauna's family, she got to know Brian when I had first met him. So Shauna's in the Complete Strength family. So
Absolutely. Definitely part of the Complete Strength family. Cool. She's part of the fam and the Complete Strength fam, from afar, from a distance. Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Hey, so for those of you who have been listening, listen last week, episode 4, I did my 2-minute drill. Sidney's idea for me. It was really cool to do a 2-minute drill and I think I need to explain it a little more, because last week it probably sounded really random, and you are correct. It is totally random. The idea is I'm giving myself 2 minutes at the end of the episode to essentially just kind of talk about whatever's on my mind. I feel like there's a lot of things that are really important to me, and things that I have an opinion on and that I'd like to share, I'd like to talk about. Some are related to Complete Strength and some are not. And today, something that's been on my mind a lot is, this is actually from the Bible. So this is stuff that, for me, my faith is what grounds me and what holds me together and what gives me hope and a direction for my life and for business and for marriage. And so this is something that has been really, really beneficial and really helpful for me. And it's something that I've been looking over for these past few weeks now. But so 2-minute drill. So point being, 2-minute drill is totally random. It's random thoughts and it's random ideas. And so for today, 2-minute drill on this one, episode 5, is going to start right now. So I'm starting my timer. We got 2 minutes. Here's the thing. And I'm looking through James. James 1 says, "Be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls." He goes on in chapter 3 to talk about the tongue. And this is the point of this, is how we speak, how we talk to one another, the words we use, the tone we use, and just how we go about communicating with other people. In James 3, he says, "The tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things." He says, "The tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing." And he says, "These things ought not to be so." He calls the tongue a restless evil full of deadly poison. And with it, we bless our Lord and Father, and with it, we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. So in our current society, I'm already at 1 minute, so that was my 1-minute part. In our current society, I feel like we are just so quick to speak and so slow to actually listen to other people. And I try to, for myself, it's something I really try to value and I really try to work on, is to be quick to listen and very slow to speak. Sometimes a little too slow for Sidney. She gets a little irritated with me sometimes because I can be too slow to speak, but I really want to think through and process what I'm about to say because I don't want it to be hurtful. I don't want it to be negative. I don't want it to be complaining or gossiping. It's more than dirty language or filthy jokes or whatever, but I want my tone to be uplifting and building. And so I really want us, let's think about I got 5-second countdown here.
Words are powerful.
Words are powerful. Be quick to listen and slow to speak. That's kind of my 2-minute drill takeaway. That's it. Time's up for that. That was the 2-minute drill. Episode 5, we're signing off here.
Signing
Sid,
off.
yeah, thanks.
Think before you speak. It'll help you in every
There you go.
relationship. If it's marriage, or if you're talking to the media after a really hard loss,
There you go.
it's very beneficial.
Yep. Really appreciate Shanna joining us all the way from Seattle too. These guys have great stories about Pat Summitt and their time at Tennessee and as Lady Vols. And I hope everybody, I would read the stats again, but we don't have time for that. But
Bye, guys.
These two are they're really great players. They're obviously, Sid's my wife, so she's my favorite, and Shanna's a close second. She's just part of the fam. And we just really appreciate her being on. Hey, check back with us for the next one. Look out for the Complete Strength Podcast, Apple Podcast, Google Play Music. We're on Spotify and the Podbean podcasting app as well. Leave us some comments and thoughts and for our next episodes, and we look forward to putting that out next week.
Later.
Thanks, guys. See ya.